And so this paper by Boleg is really a philosophical explanation of why a researcher chose a certain methodology for her work. And I like this, I like this paper because most researchers, you hardly ever know anything about them. And that's not coincidental because we are in the quantitative sciences. We believe that there's only one interpretation of a certain variable. So let's say blood pressure, it's either high or low based on the measurements that you took, and there's nothing subjective about that. So when a patient comes into a clinical trial, the patient has no say, absolutely no say in what the researchers do with the data. Um, and also, the researchers don't need to have any explanation to do about why they're doing the research. They just do the research. But here, this researcher, qualitative researcher, is explaining why they do what they do. It's not just to get data and publish, but to change systems. So, one of the things that Lisa Bolek says is that one of our premises that inequities um, exist. Okay, so for example, talked about PrEP is 92% effective. Okay, yet a survey of pharmacists shows that with race data shows that black people accounted for just 10% of PrEP prescriptions, compared with 74% of white people. And to one background to this is that for HIV/AIDS, which is what PrEP is used for, more black people in percentage wise, have HIV/AIDS. And so, if more black people have HIV/AIDS, but yet less of the black people get the effective medicines, that is an inequity. And so she goes on to say that, um, and I'll read this verbatim. It says that so typically that is in the biomedical and a lot of the different ways we do research in public health. It says interventions and policies they inform typically conceptualize health primarily as a property of individuals and the result of individual behaviors. That is partly true, but it's not the whole truth. That's what she's saying. Because she says, in so doing, they obscure the role of social and structural factors, e.g., political, economic, institutional discrimination, that constrain the health of historically marginalized individuals. Okay, and so she called that epistemologies of ignorance. That people are ignorant of um, how to look at these things because they're only looking at numbers, they're not considering the historical antecedent for that. Again, she goes on to talk about what methodology is, which, like I described earlier, is the description, the explanation, and the justification of methods, and not the methods themselves. Um, and so, in terms of some methodologies, and she talked about some examples: grounded theory, discourse analysis, ethnographies, participatory action research, phenomenologies, case studies. And she's one of the things she said is that methodological diversity in US qualitative research is scant. A lot of people use exactly the same thing all the time, that there is more that people can be using. And she now comes and says that one of those things that people should be using is methods like ethnography, observation methods, photo voice, okay, and critical ethnography. And this, again, going back to her goal, is to emphasize that she really wants to dismantle oppressive structures, okay, oppressive structures that creates the inequity in access to um, drugs or resources by minority people or by historically marginalized people, the poor, the people who live in rural areas, racial minorities and things and so on. And so she describes ethnography, and then describes photo voice. And I will just focus on photo voice here. It is so the methodology of photo voice is actually, it could be, and it depends on how it's applied, is actually a participatory action methodology. So it's not just the researcher, it's the researcher and the um, participants that are co-constructing some reality using photos. Okay, so in this case, intentionally, again, it's a critical method, meaning, like she said here, you use group discussion of photographs to facilitate critical dialogue, meaning dialogue where people that were not usually heard in the past now get to be heard. And they not just get to be heard as if you're doing them a favor. Yeah, they get to be heard as equals. That's the ideal in critical dialogue like that. So critical in English and critical here mean different things. So it's a participatory action methodology. Usually, so participatory action methodology is you're not just about, well, let me show that this problem exists. No, it's an action research. Let us then solve that together. So when the participants and the researchers are there, typically you would now bring like administrators who can help to change whatever needs to be changed. So you're showing the evidence with pictures that are very compelling because we all relate to pictures very easily. And the participants are there who are the ones experiencing the inequity, the problem, and the researchers are there who are the ones who know the theory, and the administrators are there who are the ones who have the resources to change whatever the problem is. And so together, um, you are perhaps creating the evidence for policy, or perhaps you are actually mobilizing people right there and then to go and solve the problem. But that's what participatory action research is. It's not just, oh, I published. No, there has to be a change. So this is a powerful method for people that are social injustice conscious. Finally, here I just want to talk about different ways that we now interpret the data. So now we've discussed methodology, and we've chosen a method, which could be analysis, thematic analysis, visual analysis, or pictures. It might be focus groups, and it might be photo elicitation. Photo elicitation is when you take a photo and you all discuss it to extract the deeper meaning in that photo. So after you've chosen the methodology, you've chosen the method, how do you interpret it? Well, there are different ways, but you could be a realist. So a realist is similar to a post-positivist because they say that a realist says, "Oh, there's one truth, and my job is to really really find it." So he goes and tries to look for the evidence to support that view. That's the realist. But there's also phenomenological, which is I'm not trying to find some unique insight. The goal here is to understand the subjective experiences of participants. You're not trying to discover what is really going on or what causes the social or psychological events. That's not the goal. The goal is what is the subjective experience of the participants, how they experience that problem or that phenomenon. Then the social constructionist view is, you try to co-construct knowledge, typically through language you discuss, and as you discuss, you begin to create a shared understanding of whatever is going on. So finally, what is Lisa Boleg's epistemological stance? That is how she discovers truth. She takes a critical health equity stance. Critical again, dismantling inequities or existing power structures. Health, of course, she's into health. In this case, HIV/AIDS, and equity. That's what she wants. She wants to. The critical is about having equity, for all people, whether they're marginalized historically or not. And of course, this will clash with conventional masculinity, and so a lot of people will push back against that because she happens to be woman with from a minority background. So she is someone that historically um, is underrepresented in a lot of these kinds of discussion. And so she's taking this approach to begin to dismantle that inequity. And again, she takes intersectionality, whereby intersectionality is you're not just looking at my identity as a patient or as a woman or as a, you know, or by my profession or my religion. Intersectionality is considering all of me. Okay, so don't exclude me because of my religion, or don't exclude me because of my gender, or don't exclude me because of my race, because any of those factors can be used to exclude another person. And her methodology is critical discursive psychology. Discursive meaning discourse. That is constructivist. It's through discourse with these people, these patients that might have HIV/AIDS. It's through the discourse with them that she um, and giving them power, critical, giving them the power that she finds the unique insights that she shares, that she reports in her research. I really welcome you to go and pick a qualitative research and ask yourself this question: what is their methodology? What is their method? And how what interpretation stance are they taking? Do you think they're constructivists, or do you think they are um, interpretivists? Just think about it.